I want to ask you a question, and somebody just brought this up. They asked if it's similar problems between the U.S. The U.S. is a whole lot better compared to what y'all are going through. But do y'all have like CBD oil and stuff
Yeah,
like
of course. Yeah.
that? And
Yeah, we've got that. We've only just had that in this country for about 2 years now.
oh wow,
And it's pretty popular. Yeah, I mean, we've only had it from our chemists in the last 2 years where you could just buy it over the counter. Before that, the only way you could get cannabis or, CBD oil was from your doctors if you had a medical certificate.
okay,
But if not, you would have to. For the last 2 years, you can go, any high street shop or any chemist and buy it over the counter. I tried it. I've got to admit, I tried it for my pain. My daughter turned around. She said, "I felt, Dad, you come across as more relaxed," but I
right,
didn't think it worked on any of my pain. So I gave it a month. I gave it a trial for a month. I said, "I'll take it for a month." I just didn't feel it did anything for me. Whereas my doctor said you just felt a lot more calmer. You came across as a lot calmer. Because my children have grown up with me. They were both born when I was in the army, and we've all been quite close together. My wife stuck with me through all of my trials of being triggered off with post-traumatic stress disorder, and where I've been really nasty and angry. Uh, we've stuck together through that. We met when I was 12 and she was 11, so I think that relationship bond had already survived. My first part of the British Army.
right,
And then we waited until I was a sergeant, where I felt I could afford children, because we know how
hmm,
expensive children are, and I wanted to make sure I had enough money to make sure I could look after my own children. Not expecting to. I knew I was going to come out of the army at some point. You know what I mean? And but I didn't expect to get a medical discharge. I thought I was just going to come out of the army with all these conditions, which as I said, I still didn't buy into that I had Gulf War syndrome. So I knew at some point I was going to finish my army career, and hopefully get the best rank I could achieve. But I realised when you're angry in the British Army, when you triggered off with PTSD, you can say things to people which, at the time, through irritability, you probably don't mean. And the problem is when you tell your commanding officer that you're going to kill the cunt, you know what I mean? It doesn't go down too well. In the end, put you in handcuffs and drag you away to the
yeah,
doctor. And I actually did that twice. And I know, if any of the British guys who serve with me would probably back me up on that. I would regularly kick off. I'm sure some of your guys would probably say like a bitch, but I would. It didn't stop me getting promoted, but it did stop me from getting too far. I think if I wouldn't have had post-traumatic stress disorder in the British Army, I probably would have got a lot further. I could easily have made most of my courses were at warrant officer level.
yeah,
Uh, so you go from private to warrant officer, and then you get a commission. So I was more than achievable to make warrant officer level. But I think because when I was ill and people didn't understand the mental illness or the way post-traumatic stress affects you, it stops you. It's a barrier to getting promoted in work. So when you stay in work and you're suffering with a mental illness, and at the time I used to refuse medication. I didn't take medication until 2000. So I got medically diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder in the army in September 1991. But I refused any type of psychiatric medication until the early 2000s. The first medication I went on was anti-acid tablet. And then I got medically discharged because, I suspect just like the American forces, well, I'm not really sure, but, if you went and seen a psychiatrist in the British Army, that was a no-no.
right,
People
yeah,
automatically thought you were mad. People automatically thought you were mad. It was only because of my character, and my regiments are quite a close knit regiment. Most of the guys. You grow up with them. You serve on the same operational tours. You know them all. You go in the corporal's mess. You go in the sergeant's mess or the warrant officers and sergeants mess. So these guys you're working with every day as a professional soldier, so they all know you. So when you get triggered off, and they're all very sympathetic of any of the guys in our regiment who do brave registration, because all of them have an introduction to that job. So all of them know the cost it can take out on you mentally. You know what I mean? So, guys in my regiment, when you triggered off and you tell, you kick off or you have you're triggered off, it's not a worry. They'll just send you off. It's when you come out of the regiment and get posted somewhere else and people don't know you,
Right.
and you get triggered off. That's when the problems start occurring, because people don't know you at them units. At your own regiment, they would look after you. At these other units, they would, mark you up, mark you sick, and you're out the door. And then if it's on the mental health grounds, well, that's like a nail in your coffin. Excuse the pun. You know what I mean? And that's what it'd be like. So, it's a no going sick, but going sick with mental health problems in the British Army causes you a lot of problems. And, the British Army, even today, are still fighting the stigma around mental health in the British Army. They've tried absolutely all sorts. The only other big campaign the British Army do is when it gets to December for Christmas, and they do a big one for drinking and driving, because that's when drinking and driving problems start occurring in Britain anyways, traditionally around the festive period. So there's two, what they fight is the constant stigma around mental health, and they're always talking, it's good to talk, and drink and driving, or the people getting still drunk. And we have a compulsory drug test in the British Army, but we don't have a compulsory alcoholic abuse. You know what I mean? So you could be getting drunk all the time and everyone's the same as you. You know what I mean? If you're at a unit where everyone's getting drunk, no one's. The amount of times when I look back now and realise that I was still drunk driving vehicles the next day, because I wouldn't have finished drinking until 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning in the sergeant's mess or the corporal's mess if we had parties.
But y'all ships. Now, this is something that I don't know why our U.S. Navy doesn't have it, but y'all got a bar on every Europe ship. I walked on board. I was pissed. I was like, how in the hell do they get the liquor and we don't get nothing? Yeah, that was like
all everywhere. I mean, even in the first Gulf, the first Gulf was probably the first operation where I stayed sober in theory, and that's sober in the sense that I didn't touch any alcohol at all. Everywhere else I've been, there was alcohol freely available.
Yeah.
Even in Bosnia, in Northern Ireland, if you weren't on duty, you could have a drink. They used to call it the 2-can rule. Okay. But I'm not sure if they meant jerry cans or beer cans, you know what I mean? Because I don't think anyone took any notice of 2 cans. You just get, in the Falkland Islands, you, as a junior rank, you're not allowed to touch spirits. So you could have alcohol and they would open all the cans. Well, the problem is in the Falklands, right across the road, is the civilian construction business. So all you used to do was get an invite over there and they could drink as much spirits as they want. So you just go over there and get pissed. You know what I mean? And in Bosnia, when I was out there in Croatia, in the local, we call them golly shops.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you call these, like civilian cafes on the military bases. And you'd just go in there and the guys will make you coffee and he'd lace it with brandy. So everyone says, anyone having a drink? No. And all the guys would be in this little cafe drinking coffee brandy. You know what I mean?
See, that's not fair because I'm telling you, we would have to be out to sea for 6 months and we would get 1 beer. That is it. We pull into port, we have 1 beer. I mean, but you could sell it for $100. I mean, it was really good money if you want to sell your beer.
Yeah, definitely. No, I mean, alcohol gets through. I mean, I can remember in the first Gulf, the guys were buying that Swan up in Al Jabal. It was like Swan non-alcoholic beer.
Yeah.
And they were sat there taking the tops off and pouring it in a big plastic container and getting yeast sent over from Britain, buying sugar, and adding it, and then about a month later, like they're on still, and then they'd literally a couple of 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, this non-alcoholic beer was an alcoholic, and they'd be drinking that. I drank some horrible bloody drinks in the first Gulf. When I went to places like Al Jubail, Riyadh, one of our teams was down in Riyadh, was doing that, and I always used to laugh because I flew down to Riyadh with a dead body. And we flew into the airbase, which I believe was a joint airbase for the British, Americans, and anyone else was there. And the guys picked us up. We took the body down to their local morgue, and then went to their compound. And the alarms went off, and everyone. I was sort of like so blasé, They're all putting on their NBC kit, which I think's your mop. Is it your mop?
Right, yeah, our mop, yeah.
I suppose it's called NBC, and they'd all be getting rushing to get it on, and I was just taking my time because my attitude was, well, I'm from Al Jubail. We see these Scud missiles flying over every other night, not realising, well, actually, Riyadh's where they land. You know what I mean? So I'm watching them in Al Jubail flying over up until they near enough took out Shed 5, which was one of the American sheds. But these Scuds were flying over and not realising, as I said, they were going to land somewhere, and they were aiming for Riyadh. So when I went down there with this dead body, they're all putting their kit on, and I'm just taking my time. And I heard this massive whoosh and boom where it hit a hotel complex, probably about 200-300 meters from where we were. And they were aiming for the airbase, the runway, and it was bouncing off there and hitting the accommodation. And so, I'm just sat there, and I can remember trying to get my glove on my head. You know what I mean? Like a chicken, trying to get this glove on. I was trying to get my kit on that fast because this explosion, and they're all masked up and they've got their masks on. And I'm still trying to get my kit on because they were so used to doing it, down in there, whereas we didn't even bother doing that in Al Jubail. You know what I mean? The only preventative measure in Al Jubail, what I can remember having there, was we carried our respirator around with us, was the NAPS tablets and the malaria tablets, what we've taken every, either every 8 hours or every day at every meal. They were the only preventative measures we were doing up in Riyadh, in Al Jubail, sorry, compared to the guys down at Riyadh, which were getting Scuds landing every day or every night down where they
crazy.
were. And I can remember being down there saying, get me on an aeroplane, I want to go back up north. I'm not hanging around here. I think while I was down there for that 2 days, I think 3 Scuds hit Riyadh that within them 2 days. You know what I mean? And then the only other one I know of was the one that landed in the docks at Al Jubail, what just missed Shed 5, which was one of the American sheds.
Wow. I remember when we pulled into Fajar, I believe it was, and we just got out there, and some moron, when they brought up on a helicopter, brought a pallet, he put paint thinner over our exhaust system on our ship. I just got on the phone with my mom, and I'm like, hey, we made, I can't tell you where we're at, but we're over somewhere in the Middle East. All of a sudden, an explosion happened. I turned around. I just don't know why I said it. I said, I got to let you go. Our ship just blew up, and I hung up. And I went back about 3 hours later. I was like, oh, crap, I got to call my mom back. I felt so bad, but I mean, it was crazy over there. And I mean, I did a lot of unreps. That's where ships go side by side and we're sending cargo back and forth. And I will never forget the British Navy. That their captain, he decided, well, we're going to show y'all what it's like to fly a British helicopter. That dude was literally doing circles around our ship in a helicopter. Stuff I ain't never seen anybody do in a helicopter. I was so impressed with that. I was like, but hell no, I never would I fly with y'all in a helicopter. No way. Mm-hmm. Them guys are crazy. But I love it.
My first unit when I went into the regular army was a nuclear missile regiment. So we had what the Americans had, Lance missiles in the 1950s, and we still had it as a battlefield nuclear weapon, which always used to make me laugh, that, because I was thinking a battlefield nuclear weapon would literally obliterate London. So I don't know what an interballistic continental missile would obliterate. So we used to work with the Americans because it was 2-on for every English job. Every British job, you had an American soldier. So we had a military police, logistics regiment, missile regiment, which was the Americans, just based outside Munster in West Germany. And we were down at 8th Regiment, which was a logistics regiment with nuclear missiles. And they used to deliver the main missile assembly. And, and then they'd meet up with 50 Missile Regiment, put the nose cone on the things, and then put it in the Lance missile, which was the weapons platform to fire it. So every job we had Americans there. So that was my first time I worked with the Americans. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't rate you. Then, back in the 80s, I just didn't rate you because, you'd been out of probably Vietnam since 1973, 74. Some of these guys had served then. It was just quite strange for the two cultures to come together, because like I said, we both speak English, but our cultures are totally different. And then they gave us an American officer, a captain, and our officer went to an American platoon, and we ended up with this Puerto Rican officer who didn't speak English, which was weird to us because you can imagine it's pretty difficult for us to hear some of the American accents, like it would be for Americans to understand some of the British accents, the regional accents,
right?
East Coast, West Coast. Ours is normally the south of England and the north of England, and then you've got Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. So it's, trying to navigate the British accents. And then we ended up with this American lieutenant who we all had difficulty trying to understand. They then gave him an American sergeant who could, to us, spoke English a lot better, which he then missed it in interpretation, in a sense. So none of us ever did anything for him, because by the time he'd said it and we'd all understood it, you sort of like stood there gulping at him thinking, what did he just say then? What did he just say then? You know what I mean? And, the whole point of orders in the army is to get something done as fast as you can do it, not to stand there and ask,
right,
what did he just say? So we had him for about 3 months. Then we lost him. And then we came across a black American officer, female, who then worked with us, which was, that was a novelty for us because, we're a frontline unit in the British Army, frontline in the sense of we were a pioneer infantry moving a nuclear missile under the Roker or transport to get it across to a Royal Artillery. And they kept giving us, like an experiment, these American officers who were, so it was quite novel to us having a Puerto Rican officer and then having a black female officer. And the thing is, we don't have, we see all these things that are coming out of America where there's this sort of like white and black thing, whereas I don't think it's ever been a problem in Britain, in that sense.
Right.
So, my regiment was made up of a lot of black lads from the Commonwealth. So we had one of my sergeant majors from Ghana, which would be West Africa. You would meet Jamaicans, you would meet African guys, you would meet, anywhere. So you would meet all these foreign guys what had come in from the Commonwealth anyway, because any of the Commonwealth countries can join the British Army anyway. You know what I mean? So we used to have a lot of black guys, but all of us just couldn't understand this Puerto Rican officer or this female black American officer. You know what I mean? And then getting out to the Gulf, it was only the Gulf War where I then turned around and I was really impressed with the American forces, because I always used to think back in the 80s we were playing at it, doing exercise reforges, and it was just like we were all playing at it. And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't that impressed with our allies, and I'm sure they probably weren't impressed with us because we did totally, things totally different. But when I got to the Gulf, I was really impressed with American forces then, because I think when you went on a war footing, that's when the professionalism came out. And that's what I took away from the Gulf War, that, you know, I was the younger brother of a heavyweight boxer, and usually American forces were like the heavyweight boxer. And I knew that I am glad I'm with them and working with them. You know,
That's
when there's
awesome.
500,000 of them, that's how it felt to me, is that I had the protection of my big brother. I've got 10 brothers and sisters, and I'm the youngest, and all of them were quite good fighters. So, you know, that's how it felt to me, that I had a big brother who was watching my back while I did my job. You know what I mean? And that's the impression I took away from the first Gulf was, you know, working with our American allies. 80s just didn't have any, you know, there was just nothing there. But I think that's because of it was like it was an experiment of, let's give them another American officer. And it just didn't work for us. Whereas, you know, years later, working with the Americans again, you know, and working with more of a scope of Americans, you know, the United States Marine Corps, infantry regiments, cavalry regiments, you know what I mean? I saw the difference in and the professionalism and the, you know, just the get up and go sort of attitude, you know, in comparison to, you know, the British Army, whereas, you know, we are quite small, and we've been small for a long time. You know, you really have to push us to get us going and mobilise, you know, the British Armed Forces in comparison to, you know, the Americans. And I saw the same again in Bosnia. You know what I mean? We just felt our hands were tied behind our back under the UN. And then when they did the Daytona Agreement and the Americans turned up, you know, they came with that attitude of, look, take the mines off the road, otherwise we'll shoot you. And, you know, there wasn't a second question to that. Whereas, you know, for a couple of years, British Army had been trapped in this mentality of, you work for the UN, United Nations, you do what they say, so keep your mouth shut and just do what you're told. Whereas when, you know, in 95, when I saw the Americans turned up in the October 95 into Toulouse and going for Kuf in them areas slightly north of us, you know, we were chuckling when the Americans turned up, and they were just sort of like, move your minds or we'll shoot you. And then, you know, and then just let rip him with a 30 cal or a 50 cal. You know what I mean? And whereas, you know, for the previous 2.5 years, 2.5, 3 years, we'd had our hands tied.
Yeah,
So
well,
yeah, I mean, I just got impressed as, you know, the years went on.
yeah, what's funny is I got to read what John wrote down here. He said, you know, why we send an LT? He said, oh my gosh, LOL. And he also says, depend on officers, you know, in all fairness and everything. But I really like this comment. He goes, likewise, love the Brits, all of the country's troops, great people. And he's right. I mean,
Yeah,
and he said, you know, well trained y'all are. And, you know, of course, we speak differently than y'all speak proper English. I don't. So you'll have to forgive that part of me. But the one thing I did find is when we did joint exercises with their Navy, it was no different because them guys would pull up alongside of us. We'd shoot a shot line, send our cables over. Our equipment all worked together. The
yeah,
only thing I did not like was the Belgium ships. I'm going to be honest with you. They had to run their rigs old fashioned from the 1920s. Everything had to be done by hand. I was like, what the hell? We got winches right here. We don't have to do all that. But
yeah,
it was neat to be able to run the old rigs back in the, you know, early 1940s and 50s. It was really neat to do that. But I tell you, that British helicopter pilot, ain't no way on God's green earth would I ever get in that helicopter with that man. That guy was crazy.
yeah. It's when you said about the helicopters, what reminded me of, you know, when I first got to Germany, because we used to put the main missile assembly of the the Lance missile,
Yeah.
which was the nuclear bit, actually in the Chinooks. And then they would sling our Land Rovers underneath it and then take off. So when you were saying about this mad Brit flying an helicopter around, I can remember from being in with these mad Brits in the Chinooks flying us around with a nuclear missile. And we never knew if it was live or practice. That was the difference, is where every exercise we did, you know, although they called it an exercise, we never knew when we went to Munster North, which was an American ordnance depot, shared by the British and the Americans. So when we drove in there and went to the nuclear missile side of it, we never knew if they put nuclear missiles on the exercise vehicles or they put dummy rounds. And so we never knew for the whole of that exercise whether we had a real one or a practice one. And to be honest, when I look back, I don't think any of them were practice. I think all of them were live because of the job. We're fighting through the Cold War, sat in Germany, expecting the whole of the communist Red Army to smash through that, the German border and come trundling through Western Europe, and to fight us in Germany. And so when I look back, I think every one of them missiles were live. When I look back, because of the exercises we're doing, and like I said, but having these crazy Americans where you couldn't understand, or they had these strange habits. But I can remember when we got out to the Gulf, and we'd always laughed that the Americans turn up with burger bars and ice cream wagons and that. And we just couldn't believe it. The British, we just couldn't believe it. You get your hot meals from the cookhouse, or you got your ration packs if you're on exercise in your hole. You didn't get anything else. So, to go on an operational tour and, go down to the docks and this American burger bar sat there, that was wonder, because, we only had, the burger shops had really opened in the late 70s, early 80s. We didn't have burgers before that in Britain.
What?
Not hamburger. Yeah, we didn't have, we had the, sort of like the combination, but we didn't really have hamburgers until what we call Wimpy went on the high street in the late 1970s. So I was born in 64. So, I was a young teenager in the late 70s coming up to leaving school. And so then to get these shops on the high street, which were burger bars, as in Wimpy, you know what I mean? So then to get into the early 90s, so we'd only really had them 20 years. Then you get to the early 90s and the Americans are turning up with burger bars. I just thought it was great, and so did all of us. So rather than going to the cookhouse, we used to make an excuse to drive down to the docks and actually just go and stand at the burger bar and chat to the Americans, or buy as many burgers as you can.
I would have made
stick down your
throat. I would have made the Americans pay for it. I would have been like, "Hey guys, we never had one of these. Can y'all buy us one?"
No, they're not that daft. We might have thought they were daft, but they're not stupid. Let's be honest. But yeah, we had that, and then next to it they had the ice cream shop. So that was another setup, because all we had was NAFI. Ours is called NAFI, which is the Naval, Army, Air Force, Forces Institute. And so they had what they call EFI, which is the Expeditionary Force Institute, what deploys. And really all they sell is sweets and watches and CDs and, air products and, crap like that. And, a tin of Coke, which, wasn't cold. So, yeah, they had this little NAFI in comparison to, what the Americans should turn up with. But I noticed in Bosnia when we were there, we used to have queues of Americans because, as I said, our NAFI sold watches, music, CDs, tapes, videos, video, cameras. Whereas I wasn't sure if you still had that facility, whereas we did. So if you wanted to buy something tax-free, you would just go in the NAFI. So I used to see queues of French and Americans outside the NAFI, waiting to get in to get a tax-free camera or tax-free other bits and bobs. So, you know what I mean? Whereas we'd be trying to queue up in the American bases to get to the burger bars.
Well, when we would pull in, I'm going to think it wasn't Fajara, it was in Bahrain, which I'm going to give we have in Texas called Bluebell ice cream. Bluebell and Pizza Hut.
All right.
I am telling you, I had to give them a lot of credit because they put trucks over there. I mean, we were able almost every time we pull in to load up cargo, here comes Bluebell and Pizza Hut. You go get you some pizza and you go get you a Bluebell pint of ice cream in Rocky Roads. It was awesome.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I took some photographs. I just before I went to the Gulf, I swapped bank accounts, and just for the enticement, they give you a camera. You know what I mean? It was just a shitty lick, but it was my combat camera, and I took it anywhere. So when I went to the Gulf, I took bloody hundreds of photographs, you know, hundreds of them, and I sent them all home to get, to get printed off.
Yeah.
And so I ended up with hundreds of, and I didn't realize. People always used to say to me, I used to say, no, I didn't take a lot of photographs, but I didn't realize actually I did. I took hundreds of photographs, and I thought to myself when we did the training because I didn't volunteer for the grade registration. That was just not a job which was in my remit. I got told I was doing it because I was over 21. I could drive a 4-ton truck, and I was a young NCO. That was the remit to get me in. And so, when they said to me, "You're doing grade registration," I was like, "No, not me. I'm not doing it." "Oh no, you don't have to volunteer for it. You've been volunteered."
Oh,
You know what I mean? And so my my officer commanding had volunteered me to do it. But to me, it was just one of them jobs, like any job I had in the army. You do 100%. You as a professional serviceman, which a lot of your guys, who were professional service know, you give the job 100%. You whinge and whine after the fact. You put your complaints in after you've done the job, but while you're doing the job, you just knuckle down and get on with it.
right.
And so when I got told I'm doing the job, I wasn't happy with it. But everything was just, you were just unexpected. Everything. I mean, the last time we guys had done the job was in the Falklands War, which is sort of like 10 years before. And then the last time they did the job before that would have been in the Korean War and, the Second War. Because as I said, it was just one of them units what only gets activated when we go off on a war footing. So to deploy to the Gulf. And our job was, if a serviceman was killed up front, we were going to go up and collect him and then bring him back to the divisional area and then get him out of the country. But they would wait. If you were killed today and no one was killed for a couple of weeks, you would sit in the morgue. You don't get sent back straight away because you're not going to send one aircraft back with one body.
Right.
They'd have to get lots of stuff to send back. So you could have a body sat in that morgue for, a couple of days, if not, maybe a week or something. And until they had a few of them. And, so getting that job, being told you're doing the job and then getting out. So that process was someone would go up and collect the body, like the collection point team, bring him down to the search and recovery team, bring him down to Al Jubail, get him down to Riyadh, and then he'd fly out the country. But each time we would be sitting in a morgue to then move him on. And then on the 23rd of February, they changed it because none of us were going to go in with the frontline troops because they were said that we would process it away from the front line. And then, as I said, around about the 23rd of February, they said, "Stop what you're doing. We're going to change the OBAP." And it was like, "How are you going to do that?" And then what we're going to do is send 2 teams forward. So we're going to send one team with 4 Armoured Brigade and one team with 7 Armoured Brigade. So 4 Armoured Brigade is an infantry brigade. 7 Armoured Brigade was an armoured brigade, i.e. tanks. So 7 Brigade, there was 2 tank regiments and an infantry regiment. In 4 Armoured Brigade, there was 2 infantry regiments and a tank regiment. So 4 was the infantry compared to 7. And when I was in Germany, I was based with 4 Armoured Brigade. So when they asked, I said, "Well, look, there might be a chance I might know a few people in 4 Armoured Brigade. I'll go 4 Armoured if somebody's going to 7." And so I ended up with 4 Armoured Brigade, and we ended up attached to the 1st Royal Scots, which is the most senior British infantry regiment in the British Army. They're there. I mean, they've gone now. They've amalgamated all the British infantry regiments, but we went with them and the Royal Regiment of Fusiliers. So they wear a berry and a big, like a big budgie feather sticking out the cap. So they're all our Fusilier regiments. That's how you can recognise them.
Okay.
They have different coloured plumes hanging off the back of their berries, or I should say the back of their cap badge. Apologise to any of the guys who are Fusiliers. And so we ended up with them, and they were all Warrior. So they all had Warrior armoured fighting vehicles. We had a Land Rover and a 4-tonner. So I don't think anyone clicked on. Trying to get a wheeled vehicle to keep up with a track vehicle in the desert is extremely difficult. I'm not saying it's not bouncy in any vehicle. You know, anyone went through and, you know, in Desert Storm and actually went through the desert when we all attacked the Iraqis, you know, that bounce of them vehicles was absolutely horrendous. You know, your vehicle was bouncing all over in them convoy routes. So they changed it for us, and we ended up the front with the infantry. And what they said to us, we were going to do what the Americans do. And we were like, what do they do? And they said, well, if a serviceman gets killed, they go forward, collect the body while the fight's on for the morale purpose and get him out of the way. And we were like, well, let the Americans do it then. You know,
Right.
If they want to do that, let them do it. They can do us. You know what I mean? It's more of them than us. But no, they said that's what they wanted us to do. So, you know, the job was, if anyone was killed while the fighting was on, we were going to move in and, you know, take the body and remove it out there. So when that action finished, the guys didn't have to worry about psychologically of, you know, enemy dead good, our own dead bad. You know, and it was our own dead that gives you the psychological problems in theory. So we went in with the Royal Scots and the Royal Regiment of Fusiliers and saw nothing for the first 2 days. So from the 24th and 25th, all I did, like a lot of the American infantry units and the tank units or cavalry, was just travel through the desert with no name, in a sense, with nothing, you know, just blankness and these massive big convoys. You used to look behind you, just see hundreds of vehicles. That's how it felt, of hundreds of vehicles behind you, just traveling in this mine-cleared route. And then in front of you, in the dark, during the daytime, you could see the vapor trails of the MLRS, the old multi-barrel rocket launchers, in the distance. At night time, they were just, you know, it's like in Britain, we have fireworks night in November. So people start buying fireworks. That's what it felt. So we're brought up with that, you know, right through our early lives, all the way through. The 5th of November is when the British burnt Guy Fawkes. And Guy Fawkes was a Catholic who wanted to kill the Protestant king on the throne in early 1600s. So we celebrate burning someone, which is Guy Fawkes night, on the 5th of November. We didn't get him. He didn't kill the king. However, we got his son. We chopped his son's head off a few years later in the English Civil War. So we chopped his head off, and then his son, we kicked him out and became a republic rather than a monarchy country. So, yeah, we had the Stuarts in Britain right through the 1600s. We tried to blow one up. We chopped one's head off and kicked the other one out, which we're quite proud of that, to be honest. However, Guy Fawkes night, you grow up with that in Britain. Mm-hmm. So, you know, 5th of November, the run up to 5th of November is just fireworks. But on the 5th of November in Britain, not, you know, health and safety is really clamped down on it. But when I was a kid, the whole sky at night would be lit up. You know what I mean? With all these fireworks going off. So being out in the Gulf, it was like that when you saw MLRS going off in front of you. And then when we hit a minefield, I saw a bomb go off to the left of me, and I thought it was MLRS, and I was thinking, fucking hell, they're close. Literally, it was very similar, and I thought, fuck me, that was close. And then as I said that, I looked to the right, and this vehicle, this trailer literally on the other vehicle, in the other convoy, just lit up, and I saw this 1-ton trailer literally just fly up and hit the whole back of this truck. And I was thinking, and then the whole convoy stopped, and all I heard was, you know, I was looking in the front of us, it was a Land Rover, and I saw the guy get out, and he's on the canvas, and he's waving, and I'm thinking, what the fuck's he got up there for? And I took the window down. See, a lot of the vehicles, they took the glass out, because they said if you're at the minefield, the glass explosion will give you secondary effects. We opted to leave ours in, which was a good one, because anyone will tell you on the 24th, 25th, that first night we went into Iraq, just howled it down with rain. I mean, the rain was actually totally horrendous in the area where we went through. It was like a quagmire, the sand. So keeping the window screen in was fantastic in our vehicle, whereas a lot of them, the guys were just sat there freezing, soaking wet.
Right.
And so that minefield literally struck me up. And I remember taking the side window down and popping my head out. I remember him shouting, "We're in a minefield," and I'm thinking, "No shit, Sherlock. Fuck me, I've just seen it for myself. Back in, I've just seen 2 fucking mines go off either side of me. You know what I mean?" And I'm thinking, all right, we're in a minefield. So I put the window back up and I had Elton John, and I just turned Elton John up. I thought I had Elton John, Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, and I just turned that up because I thought, if I'm going to fucking die here, at least I want to die listening to the music I want to listen to.
There you go.
I just turned the Pink Floyd up. We had Elton John first, and then we just put Pink Floyd on, and you're just driving for hours and hours. And I just thought, I'm after that. And it was only we got to the 25th, I think, 26th is when we got our first call. It was about 4:15 in the afternoon. And a dispatch rider turned up and he said, "Have you seen the grey registration?" And we went, "Yeah, mate, you found us." Because there was only 8 of us there. I said, "Yeah, you found us." And he said, "I'm after Lieutenant Parry." And I shouted the boss. I said, "So you wanted?" And he come out and he said, he had a briefing and he come back. He said, "Look, there's been an accident." And I went, "What way?" He said, "A British tank has hit a Warrior and blown it up." This is the blue on blue with the A10. But at the time, we weren't told that. So I said, "All right." And he said, "Look, you stay with half of the section and I'll take the search and recovery team, which is the other half." There's only 8 of us, so I had 4 and he had 4. He's one of the 4, and I'll go and get him. And he said, if the convoy sets off, because, you'd only be sat in a harbour area, well, this fucking big, long, linear stretch of vehicles, if you call that a harbour area, we dug in our shell scrapes, because that was the routine, normal routine SOPs would, as soon as the vehicles turn up, you get halted, you dig shell scrapes just in case any artillery lands. And so he went off, we dug the shell scrapes, and then about an hour later he comes back and I said, "What's it like?" And he went, "It is fucking grim." And I went, "Why? What have you got?" And he said, "I've got 9 dead bodies." And I went, "Fucking hell." I was thinking 9 dead bodies, there's only 4 of them in a tank. And he went, "No, it was 2 Warriors." And I went, "The fucking tankies took 2 Warriors out." And he went, "Yeah, that's what we've been told." And initially we were told it was a British tank unit what had taken out 2 British Army Warriors. And we just didn't have any information other than we had these 9 dead bodies. We put them on to the wagon. So I've got big bags and little bags. We didn't have any body bags. We only had NBC casualty bags.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's okay when you're playing around with them. The problem is in a war, and we were expecting a chemical war. If you put a dead body in a chemical bag, if it gets down the chain, people are going to think they've got a casualty, what is chemical casualty. So it's a different drill. So by putting them in them NBC bags caused problems as these bodies were moved down the chain back to Al Jabail, in theory. And there was 2 types of casualty bags what we had for NBC. There's one with a zip. They both had big plastic things where you can see out, because an NBC nuclear, biological, chemical warfare bag is different from a body bag. You don't need to put a fucking plastic viewing bit in the front of a body bag because the fucker's dead. Right. Whereas in a casualty bag, in an NBC bag, they need to fucking hear you and speak to you. And so it was in the dark, and we put these bits of bags and that in the back of in our vehicle, and we actually had trestles, what we'd built in the back, but they'd been empty up to that point. We on the floor, we just had loads and loads of jerry cans of water. We had a generator, which we had no fuel for. But even if we had the fuel, we had no fucking water for it, because the water we had, we were drinking. And then we had our own rations in there. So when these bodies turned up, we put them on the shelving the next day when we were going to drive off. And like I said, if you drive over the desert, it is fucking like that
Right.
all day long. Like, drives you fucking crazy. And you're just bouncing like that. Well, the thing is, if you've got 9 dead bodies on the back of this trestling, them fuckers are going to bounce as well. And they bounced off and landed on the floor in a big pile. So when we stopped and they said, stop, guys. And I said to the boss, we need to process these dead bodies and get them back. And he turned around and said, yeah, not a problem. Originally, we had reefer wagons, which were refrigerated wagons.
Right.
They were going to come up the convoy and we were going to transfer the bodies to them. Well, it was only when they went over the desert and they realised you can't take a refrigerated wagon, in theory, over the desert because it breaks the unit and the refrigeration thing stops. So they decided not to use that process. What they said was they'll bring helicopters in and we'll bring them, marshal them in, and we'll cross-load them onto there. So we sat there with these 9 bodies. I brought them out. I said, we'll process them. And 6 of them were just bits, literally like a fucking big jigsaw of just bits. There was heads missing, arms missing, torsos. And the other 3 of them were complete, as if they were just asleep. And I was, trying to process that. So the first thing I opened up, I had a foot in my hand with the sock on it. And you can imagine, you're thinking, well, how come we've got a fucking foot? I thought we had 9 bodies. And they went, no, there was 9 dead. What you've got, what was left of them? Because this A4 Warthog, which we found out later, had mistaken these 2 British armoured vehicles for Iraqi armoured vehicles and let rip on them, as in sent them Maverick rounds down. The rounds had blown the back of the vehicle, so the 6 of the guys in the back had been killed. 2 of them guys and the section commander and the driver had got out of the vehicle, whereas on the other vehicle, it hit the front, which means that it killed the commander, the driver, and one of the other guys, whereas the guys in the back got out. And then we ended up with them, processed them, and then we realised we couldn't have them on because when they all landed on the floor, I counted the bags, and I counted the bags in the night before, and one of the bodies was missing. And I thought, this is going to be fucking embarrassing, this, because if we've lost a body, some poor fucker behind us is going to see a bag in the sand, walk up and open the bag, and there's going to be a dead body staring at him, which was, this black sense of humour with us. And we're also like hyenas giggling over it. Some poor fucker's going to get a nasty surprise. Actually, he'd come off the trestling and fell in between the Hessian sides, not the Hessian, the canvas side, and he was sat in there. Well, the torso was sat in there rather than the. So, I said to the guys, I went to the boss and said, sir, we've got a body missing. And, and he turned around and said, where the fuck do you think it is? And I went, I haven't got a clue. I said, he's missing. I counted 9 bags in there, sort of, and I've only got 8. And he's you could see the colour drying out of him, thinking, shit, how professional is it going to look if there's a fucking body halfway down the convoy? And then luckily we found it in the side, hanging out where the Hessian was. He was in there. Yeah. So we undid the strapping and dropped him out, or dropped it, what was ever left of him. Opened the bags up. It was fucking horrendous. Tagged. We used to call it bagging and tagging. So you would bag the body in there and then tag the body, whatever you had. But it's hard when you've got 6 of them just blown to bits. So they picked up what they could. So you can't identify any of them, whereas the 3 of them you could. And then we put them on Chinooks. So we brought Chinooks in to land us in. And actually there was American servicemen sat on the Chinooks, what was injured. Because I think, when they go to war, anyone can call in an aircraft or, a helicopter. And I think these American servicemen were all injured and this helicopter landed. So it might have been an American helicopter. And they brought us, we ran across where it landed and brought the bodies in. I can remember the loadmaster saying, what have you got? And we went, we've got some bodies. And I can remember him turning around to me saying, what the fuck you got? Dwarfs? because we're saying bodies, and you're only talking the torso, from the neck downwards to the waistline,
Right.
or bits and bodies. And I can always remember that in my head. What the fuck have you got? Dwarfs. You know what I mean? So anyway, we threw them on with all these casualties, what were sat in the back of this helicopter, and then went back to our vehicle, and that flew off. Then we carried on. We had another British fatality, and then they turned around to us and said to us, which I'm not sure if the American mortuary affairs guys had the same. Our job was to look after British servicemen, not look after every other fucker. British servicemen and allies was our job, not Iraqi dead. So when we got to Kuwait and they said, Iraq and Kuwait, and they said, you've got to sort out the dead bodies, we were like, why are you asking us? You know what I mean? It was like the penny didn't drop.
Right.
Grave registration. What the fuck are you asking us for? It's not our job. Actually, it is your grave registration. We were like, yeah, for the Brits, not for every fucker. So then we ended up in, I was in Kuwait City on the 1st of March. Literally, we got into Al Jahira airfield, which is northwest of Kuwait City. We ended up harbouring up there, and then we got the shout that we needed to get into Kuwait City and start on the dead bodies in there. And we drove down to the Basra Road, which is what you call the Highway of Death, I think. Drove down to there, to the Brits, we call it the Basra Road. We drove down there, and it was utterly carnage everywhere. I mean, fucking hell, it was a mess. There was still vehicles on fire. There was vehicles smoking. There was probably bodies everywhere. And I think the American cavalry units, your tankies and our tankies, had all your engineers or our engineers had a big dozer blade on the front of their vehicle, and they smashed right through it and cleared the road like that. So you could drive down the Highway of Death, but everything got pushed to the left and the right. Well, it was our job to go in there, and the American mortuary affairs team was there as well. They were, finding the dead bodies in there and bringing them out. So when we got there that morning, the other three teams had met up with the three teams because, there was only 32 of us there. So we had the three teams of 8-man teams. And then they turned around to my team and said, look, it's pointless all of us being here. We've got the Americans here. We've got the Brits there. You lot do that. And they said to my team, you do Route 6, which is the ring route around Kuwait City. So it starts off at the Baz Road, I think, and goes all the way around to the south of Kuwait City, which would probably take it south. And then if you go any further, you go down to Kafuji, which would be down on the border before you go back into Saudi Arabia. And so we spent the week going out in that area, just collecting Iraqi dead bodies and burying them. I met the American mortuary affair teams once or twice out there, and they had a Iraqi religious bloke, whereas we didn't bother. I mean, it's looking back now, but we just dug an hole and threw them in.
Yeah.
Dig a big and old. And if we had lots of them, we would then call up the Royal Engineers. They'd turn up with a bucket. They'd scoop the bodies up. We'd put them in a pile. Sometimes you were carrying the bits, but most times you would, they would drag the vehicle, throw the body on the back of a trailer, make mounds of them, and then this engineer vehicle would come and push them into the ground, make an hole, which you can't really do on bedrock. So you can probably take about a metre of soil off. And all we did was we had a mound of bodies, and then basically they'd push them in, flatten them out, and put the soil over them. And that's all we did, because as I said before, Iraqi dead, we just had no time for. British, yeah, Iraqi weren't interested in at the time, because I just think that was the way you're conditioned, is the enemy's bad. I mean, kill the enemy, so what?
Right.
You know what I mean? And so we're sorting out the bombings and the Apache helicopters and the B-52 bombers, all the destruction these aircraft had caused. We were picking up all the bits of that. And do that. We got to the 7th of March, so we did that for 7 days in Kuwait City. Each night we'd drive back to where the brigade was, and you had to be out of Kuwait City by 3:30 in the afternoon, because it was like the fucking Wild West. honest, it was like Dodge City,
Right.
probably when Doc Holliday and fucking Billy the Kid were there. It was like a fucking gunfight. You couldn't trust anyone behind you. Everyone was looting weapons, firing them off. I mean, we were on one position, sorting bodies out, and some fucking idiots got on an ACAT gun and started firing it across our heads. So when you're hearing these things exploding, and we all hit the deck, sent a couple of the guys over to see what it is, and you got some people pissing about on an ACAT gun. Them sort of like big Aucklanders, what you have on the ships.
Yeah.
Well, they had them on British ships at one time. But yeah, people were just picking bombs up, firing them off, throwing grenades. And so they wanted all the Brits out. There was no electricity in Kuwait City. There was no water. So they wanted us out by 3:30 in the afternoon, which gave us about, I can remember that time of the year, it was getting dark by about, it was getting dusk by about 4:15 in the morning, in the afternoon, so by 5:30 it was pretty dark. And if they had no lights anyway, which they didn't, Kuwait City was pretty dark.
Right.
So trying to get out of there, and he had minefields everywhere. They had big tiller minefields for tanks.
Mm-hmm.
Right on, they were like driving through a marsh, and you had all these upright stems, just all over the show. So I suspect if you're driving in a tank or an armoured vehicle, it'd probably be too late by the time you'd realise. Whereas we were driving, and luckily for us, we literally came across this minefield and stopped and reversed back, only because we saw these weird aerials popping out the ground. And then another night we were driving back, and you heard this whoosh. We saw the plane flying over us, and then and right in front of us as we're driving, this massive big pallet just hit the deck in front of us with the parachute, came down. It was just full of American MREs. This fucking big pallet, what nearly crushed us, was just full of American MREs. And we just took one look at them and think, fuck this, we're having this. So we cut all the banding off and grabbed loads of boxes. I reckon the Americans must have been over the moon. They didn't fucking have to eat it. For us, it was a novelty. So we cut the straps off, through fucking, you couldn't get any more boxes in the back of our Land Rover. And then drove back to 4 Armoured Brigade. This thing nearly fucking killed us. If it would have landed on our Land Rover, it would have crossed the Land Rover.
Well, see,
you know what I mean? And that all we had was the plane, and it was literally the whoosh as it come down when we actually heard it, and it hit the road in front of us. Yeah, so it was hit and miss out there, I've got to admit.
That is,
around,
I bet you ate good too. The MREs weren't bad, were they?
Different.
Yeah, different.
Like, the way your meat and gravy is, or your meat and biscuit. Yeah, some of them was a novelty. I used to like the red sauce. The paprika. What is it?
No, hot sauce, Tabasco sauce.
Yeah, Tabasco. I used to like that.
And then they would put.
I think it got to the point where I was putting it on my breakfast cereals.
Right. Well, but the good thing is they give you a little bit of bubble gum and a cigarette. Yeah.
Whereas we didn't have any of that in ours. All we had in ours was chocolate bars and boiled sweets.
Oh yeah. Well, see,
all the chocolate had melted. You know what I mean? I just wanted something cold to drink. I can remember everything, even the coldness wasn't cold enough for me. I just wanted to drink something where you could see the cold just running down the tin. And I can remember it. I just couldn't find that coldness. On the 7th of March, they called us in. We all met up, the 3 teams met up again, and then we drove in convoy down, and we'd robbed all this kit. Well, we should say liberated it. You know what I mean? We liberated fucking tons of pistols and machine guns, thinking that we'd be able to have them. You know what I mean? As if any fucker's going to be able to keep all that kit.
Right.
And we just had trailers full of fucking weapons and ammunition.
So y'all had plenty of MREs. Y'all had plenty of weapons. Man, y'all were set.
For a while, as mercenaries, realizing we were coming back into normality. we'd all been pirates of the Caribbean out there. But as soon as you come back into the forces, and I can remember we went down and we got to the Kuwaiti border post between Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, and we drove up and they checked one. They must have seen one of the weapons in the back of the trailers, and this big argument erupted between us and them, as in the Kuwaiti resistance or whoever's manning the post. So that kicked off there, ended up a bit of a standoff, and then we finally got through, drove down to Al Jubail, because Kuwait to Al Jubail is a bit of a drive, to be honest. We drove through Kafaji, and the Americans had a hard fight in Kafaji. It was the only time where the Iraqis had actually attacked any of the Allied forces. So they attacked the American Marine Corps. I think they lost about 20 odd servicemen were killed there, the Americans, when they attacked it. So that was, before the land war. So we drove through Kafaji. You drive through it on the way back from Kuwait, going down to Al Jubail on the coastal road. So we were driving through there and was pretty amazed because the place had been knocked around a bit. Drove through there all the way back down to Al Jubail. As soon as we got to Al Jubail, they took all the weapons off us. They made us fill paperwork out first, get all the serial numbers and hand it all in. And then they took all the bayonets off us. And it was like one of them cartoons where you see the guy says, hang your weapon in. It was like clink, clink,
Yeah.
clink. I kept back a few pistols, and I used to go up to Camp 13, which is American. And I didn't realise at the time the CBs were based there.
Oh, yeah.
I saw them down at Al Jubail docks, and, they were one of the units what was really, was one of the forefront units about the whole thing of Gulf War syndrome. And so they were the same unit. So I used to go across there some evenings and just sit down and have a drink with them and, have a coffee, have a chat with them, talk bollocks as you do. And literally go over there every other night. So I had these pistols, and I liked military. I like badges and buttons. So I'd be swapping these pistols for American cap badges, all sorts of crap, patches, cap badges.
Oh, yeah, we do the same thing.
Yeah, I mean,
even on ships, we would be like, hey, we'll give you a lighter. Hey, we'll give you a ball cap.
Yeah.
Well, and it's the same stuff. Roy,
yeah.
I'd hate to cut the interview.
No, it's okay.
I have to, hey, but this is what I want to do. I want to bring you back on in about a month and everything.
Okay.
It is very exciting to talk with you, and I appreciate you enlightening us on how y'all's VA system works. And I mean, I know all the listeners are probably going to be pissed off for you because it's just not fair, especially what y'all have been through and what y'all have done. And we thank you 100%. And I want to thank everybody for being on Facebook Live and everything. And they're going to hear this podcast. We're going to get it out everywhere because I want everybody to know what a fantastic the Brits have been to us and how much of a pleasure it was for having you on my show.
No, I appreciate that. And the pleasure's mine, Kevin.
Yes, sir. And we're going to stay in touch. We know how to do it now. I want to I want to stay in touch with you. But stay on real quick. Guys on Facebook, I want to end this. I want to thank y'all very much. Y'all have a great day.
And thank you from me.
I want to thank Roy Sellstrom for coming on to this program. It was very exciting to talk to him and somebody from on the other side of the world who was there fighting with us during the Desert Shield, Desert Storm. Y'all please go to my website at gulfwarsideeffects.wordpress.com or email me at kevinsimon@gulfwarsideeffects.com. And please help support this podcast and the veterans by clicking on the link below. Thank you for your support.